Morning, gentlemen, ladies, anybody who happens to be watching. Welcome to today's video. Today we are making a video to explain the different types of welts that come on men's shoes and boots. It seems that a lot of YouTubers out there and a lot of, we'll say, sources for information on footwear don't quite explain it correctly. There are Goodyear welts, there's not Goodyear welts, but within those categories there's different types and there's different benefits and reasons that shoe constructors use them. It doesn't necessarily mean one welt is better than the other, but it does mean that there are different reasons to use them. So without further ado, I will reposition our camera and see if we can't take a look at some of these welts. The big difference you're going to find is the overall appearance of the shoe. Depending on how you welt the shoe, it can give it a more rugged appearance or a more slender appearance. The other benefits can be water resistance, things like that. But most of all, the welting style will change the appearance of the shoe. As long as you go with a high quality shoe that uses a traditional welting style of some sort, you should be able to recraft it and have a new sole applied. How many times you can recraft a shoe is dependent on the type of welt. If you have a standard 360 degree Goodyear welt, you will be able to resole the shoe the most times. However, a skilled cobbler should be able to get you a nice long life out of a shoe regardless of what style of welt. Let's reposition the camera, and as you know, we're going to have a snap cut. Okay, so as we have on the table here is a myriad of different shoes from different manufacturers and different generations. The first shoe I'm going to show you is what is going to be referred to as a Blake stitched construction. Now, a Blake stitched construction, from the outside of the shoe, you will have no apparent stitching holding your sole down. But as you flip the shoe over, you will see that signature stitching. Well, where does that stitching come from? That stitching actually goes, we'll take the shoe tree out here. That stitching actually goes straight down inside through the footbed, directly out through the sole. So that is the sleekest and simplest way. It's efficient, gets the job done, and it makes for a very sleek looking shoe that doesn't have a big bulky outsole or welt hanging off. And you know, it is recraftable. Any good cobbler could put a new set of soles on here. Don't make anybody convince you, or don't allow anybody to convince you that Blake stitch is inferior. Now, let's move to the next step, which is typically going to be seen also in loafers. That is going to be, you know, I should have taken the shoe trees out of all these. That is going to be what's called a Blake rapid stitch. Now, a Blake rapid stitch has a visible welt with stitching that does indeed hold on the sole. However, what you're going to find is that there is no separate welt. This that you see on the outside is the midsole of the shoe. And the way that Alan Edmonds refers to this is a speed welt. And it's more or less, it's a Blake stitch that also has an outside stitch. Makes it a little easier. And in this particular case, the reason Alan Edmonds does this is because you see the black line in there. That's actually foam. So when you do a Blake rapid stitch, you typically have a lower profile sole because you don't have that extra layer. And then Alan Edmonds does this. This is their, what do they call it? Shock form insole. But basically, a Blake rapid stitch takes it one step further, and you hang an outsole and an insole together. Now, your next step would be a traditional Goodyear welt. Now, a traditional Goodyear welt, like on these Modiglianis here, has a piece of leather sewn around the shoe, and what that creates is a void inside the shoe, which you then sew a midsole to. So there's an internal stitching that you can't see, and then they sew a full layer of leather onto that lip that goes around the shoe. This particular pair is a 270 degree welt, meaning that they only run the welt from about here around the front to roughly here. What that does is it allows you to have a much slimmer heel block on your shoe. So this is a 270 degree traditional Goodyear welt. You have stitching on the outsole, you have a wide lip because that actually has to hang off to get your sewing machine to be able to stitch it. And then this is a 270 degree version which ends right about at the heel, allowing you to have a narrower heel profile. The next shoe we're going to show you allows me to show you two separate things. This is what is referred to as a storm welt. Now a storm welt has an additional lip that goes up and around all the way that comes on the vertical plane. And what that's supposed to do is help prevent water and snow and things like that from getting into your welt. This is also a traditional Goodyear welt, meaning that the bottom of the shoe kind of comes down in this direction. They sew on a flap that comes out, and then you attach your layers of your sole. This happens to have a really thick sole. This is a vintage shoe, different style. But what I really want you to pay attention to is this flap right here. This is your storm welt. So this is a Goodyear welt, but it's also a storm welt. So the last part is this is a 360 degree welt, meaning it goes all the way around the shoe. Now if you'll notice, if you kind of look down from the top, I don't know how much this will be obvious, but the heel is significantly wider on this shoe versus the last wingtip that I showed you. So with the storm welt and going with a 360 degree welt that comes all the way around the heel, you end up with a bit of a different, more of a casual looking shoe, a little more of a utilitarian, less dressy shoe. And then you have another example of a 270 degree welt on a boot. This has a traditional Goodyear welt going around the front, and then in order to give you a slimmer heel, you can probably notice, it's hard to get the light in on this angle, but the welt ends right here in front of the heel, and that way you end up with a much sleeker width on your heel. You can see kind of the leather. I mean, I've messed up these boots a bit, but the leather is even with the heel. There's not a big welt hanging out over it. Well, anyway, folks, this is what I can show you because I don't have any other types of shoes. But know that going with a Blake stitch is going to give you a very sleek looking shoe. Minimum overhang from your sole and your welt. It's kind of traditional for your loafer type shoes. And then at the polar opposite is going to be your full 360 degree Goodyear storm welt, which is going to make your shoe look a lot more casual. I don't know if it's really weather resistant. If you're wearing shoes like this in a snowstorm, that's your issue, not the shoes. These are not designed to be shoveling snow. You know, maybe throw them in your bag and wear a pair of muck boots or something. Get some Alden Indies and really gum them up with some mink oil and wear those. These shoes are meant for nice environments, especially like a Suede or a beautiful calf. You don't want to be beating these things up in the snow. Well, I hope you learned a little bit about welts. I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you soon, everybody.